contemplating a 5% increase. The regional bus information just went out this week, actually. I believe it just went out. Again, this is preliminary. This is going to be driven off of the number of people that sign up and where they're coming from. We believe, based on projections of where people are coming from, that we are actually going to need to add a second northern bus into the mix. So our current northern bus is very near capacity. They can only hold a certain number of students. If we get more students subscribed than that, then we need to add a second bus at that point in time. That's what we believe is going to happen, and we've budgeted accordingly for that. That'll be proved out when we get all the deposits and sign. Sign-ups back from the parents, but that's what we believe is going to happen with that.
The northern bus is the one that serves Hudson, so that's the major reason because we have more core time.
And we're tracking exactly the budget right now.
Currently, we're tracking right on budget. Yes, at this point in time.
So this is pretty predictable.
Well, once people sign up, it's pretty predictable because we collect the money that they owe. This is a projection. Based on graduating seniors, incoming sixth graders, and a guesstimate of how many of those sixth graders are going to be riding the bus is what it comes down to. We were off considerably last year. Considerably fewer people signed up than we expected. We've refined our estimate at this point in time, but that's all we can do at this point. These next two line items, this in-kind transportation and in-kind MTRS. These are numbers that we receive from the state at the end of the year, and they are an in and out type transaction. So this represents in-kind transportation is the benefit of the Marlboro buses. You'll see it down on the expense line down below, and then MTRS relates to the retirement system. This is a plug number that we get at the end of the year. That's why you don't see it in there. Since it comes in and goes right out, it doesn't have an impact on it, but it does factor into what the actuals were for the 14, 15 years, so that's why we have them there. You're also going to see the CAM charge settlement number that came through this year, the 966 number that we've talked about coming through on the income side. Again, that is a one-time settlement, so we don't expect anything this year, and obviously didn't have any CAM settlements in previous years. So that's the income side of the equation. Spend a little bit of time on the salaries. So if tuition is what we have to get right on the income side, salaries is what we need to get right on the expense side. No ifs, ands, or buts about this. So picking up on...
Tom?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I know you're moving on to expense. I'm trying to do the math on the total income. So am I reading that correctly that we're anticipating $700,000 less in income next year?
Yeah, don't forget we got $966,000 in CAM charges that we're not going to have coming through again next year. Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. I was trying to figure out the math there.
You could ask some students.
Yeah, I was trying to.
And again, it's a little difficult to compare this number because this number right here includes these two items that we get at the end of the year as an in and out. So it's better to focus on the individual line items there.
Okay.
We broke the salaries into two different buckets, the collective bargaining unit that represents the teachers and the non-collective bargaining unit that represents the administration, department heads, administrative staff, and things like that. For the collective bargaining unit, where we end up on that is going to be dependent upon what's negotiated. So right now, this number is flat year over year. Obviously, that will change. It is flat with the expectation that we will be adding an English teacher, a special education teacher, and a reading specialist as additional positions that will be in the collective bargaining unit. So those are additions over what we have at this point in time. Salaries for the non-collective bargaining unit, as Dr. McCleary talked about earlier, there's a number of positions that we're adding in here. I would highlight the Dean of Students for the middle school as one of the positions that we're looking at adding in here. A human resources person that we're looking to add into here. An assistant to the special education department. Special education paraprofessional. Those are all positions that are being added in to the salaries of the non-collective bargaining unit.
Can
So what we did last year, and the same way we're doing it this year, is whatever gets negotiated, we will need to factor into this and then re-examine the budget. That's what we did last year, I believe in August. After we ratified the collective bargaining agreement, we had to reopen the budget and, ratify the budget at that point in time as well.
It's a little higher because there's more.
It's higher because there's additional positions contemplated, but it is not, it's contemplating a 0% raise. I'm pretty confident the teachers are going to negotiate more than a 0%, raise, so.
But that's just important to keep in mind when we're looking at the budget, because the bottom line number is going to be higher. I mean, whatever the bottom line number
yeah.
is going to be lower, actually.
At the end of the day, the bottom line number is going to be lower than what it stands
What it
at
is showing
today.
right now.
Because we don't have what that number is, the salary number is going to be.
Now,
So Liz
Tom,
suggested that's a placeholder, that's a good way to understand.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a place-
Okay,
it's
great,
great.
thank you.
for the non-unit salaries, we're adding all these positions, but the number isn't moving. 2.559 to 2.6. Oh, that's 100, okay, sorry. Missing decimal place.
Okay. Substitutes, stipends, and then that gets us to our total salary number here. Then we have payroll taxes and fringe benefits. Payroll taxes, again, pretty formulaic driven. It's Social Security for people that aren't covered by MTRS. It's Medicare for everybody that's in the unit. This number will also adjust, I assume, when salaries for the collective bargaining unit come through. Fringe benefits principally relates to our insurance programs, our health care and things like that. Forecasting a 5% increase is what factored into that. So again, these are not small numbers, but they're driven off of headcount and things like that. So that's where we end up.
Is that fringe based on any feedback from our insurance broker?
It is. So if you'll notice over here, I made a note, slight increase of 5%. That's based on the feedback from our insurance broker about what we're going to be looking at next year. Again, we have to make an estimate here about how many people are going to be taking benefits. Some people use their spouse's benefits. Some people take the school's benefits. Some people get married during the year. Things happen. We make estimates here. We were low last year, right? So we were about 50,000 under what we had budgeted for. We've tried to get smarter this year, and made our estimate for this year is where we ended up on that.
So benefits are about 14% of payroll? Am I reading that
Well,
right?
divided by 76.
930 in benefits, well, payroll of 7.6.
About 15 or 16%. Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Professional development. Where are we on time? We're just about over. We're almost there. Professional development, there's a component related to tuition reimbursement that is contractually mandated. Again, that could change as part of the collective bargaining. That's the tuition reimbursement piece, and then there's a professional development piece where we send people to programs or we bring programs in-house. Instructional supplies and equipment, you're going to see some consulting expenses here for SPED consultants coming down substantially as we add the full-time positions in that we talked about up above. Obviously, our spend on consultants will go down. Classroom supplies up modestly from where it was. Textbooks are actually down. Textbooks are on a cycle. It's just that this is where we are in the cycle. Again, this is built from a bottoms-up perspective. All department heads weighing in on textbooks, looking at new courses and things like that, arriving at the textbook number. It's down from where we were the previous year. Coming into student program expenses, again, we had the income on the other side. Here, just some of the expenses coming through. You see those coming through here. The nutrition expense.
So, Tom?
Yes.
Question. So the club expense is 85, but the income is 125, and that's also the case for this year. Why do we take in more in club income than we have club expenses?
That's an excellent question on the surface. The reason is because the stipends don't flow through here. So part of the stipend number that was up here, where'd my stipend number come from? My stipend number here, part of that stipend number there is related to clubs. Part of that stipend number there is also related to the coaches. We went to the trouble of breaking it out for the athletics. We haven't done that for the clubs.
Thank you.
Again, the clubs directionally are, at break even is what the clubs are, and that's a mandate that the school is given to the clubs. They're not meant to be a profit center. Some of them had pretty substantial balances, and the school is working to work those balances down as we go forward as well.
Thank you.
Nutrition expense we talked about. Again, budgeting pretty much where we were this past year. This will be a self-correcting number based on the number of lunches that are bought at the end of the day. Athletic expenses, just again for visibility here, we wanted to break out the 4 Kicks expense since that's a pretty big expense. What we pay for physical education versus what we pay for athletic facilities. And then the athletic expense we already touched on.
It seems like it's gone up a lot. Is it that much, like, are we that many more students? What?
Actually, I'm not sure where you're coming from, so I'm going to highlight this 340 number right here is what we're projecting for next year versus what we're projecting for this year, 333. So we're up $7,000 is what we're up on that number. Did I answer your question, Jess, or are you looking
I
at?
don't know. I'm looking at the 83 number in 14 and 15, and then just 2 years later, it's at 107,000. Athletics facility rent, 14.
Again, I think we've added a number of sports since then. So I can't swear, but I don't know that we had lacrosse in previous years and things like that. So as we add additional programs, we use additional fields.
Okay.
That's right.
No, I'm being facetious, don't take this.
We'll redact that from the tape.
Thank you.
Okay, so student transportation expense includes the regional buses as well as field trip buses and athletic buses and things like that are all in the student transportation number. We broke out the athletic buses in the athletic summary for you to see it there, but that number is what's included in there. Our lease, cam, and taxes, we're in a long-term lease. It's very straightforward, that number, so that's where it comes from. Pretty consistent with previous years. Facilities expenses going up just a little bit. We paint different buildings in the school on a cyclical basis. We're up for painting one of the buildings this coming year. Inside, yes, inside. That's where that expense is coming from. Utilities, pretty consistent with where we were previous years. Information technology spend, that's actually down. We also had consultant expense flowing through this line item in the 15-16 year. Again, we've contemplated adding an IT resource in the non-collective bargaining unit, so that's one of the reasons that that's coming down. You're also going to see, as we come down into some of these other areas, contemplating our legal expenses coming down substantially year over year. So that as we hope that we see the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel related to legal, we are optimistic that that number will be coming down. Depreciation expense, again, relates to long-lived assets. Computers we depreciate over a 3-year useful life. Improvements that we make to the facilities, I believe, is over a 25-year useful life. The buses are over a 7-year useful life. It's all very formulaic that goes through there. And then again, I promised that you would see the student transportation number and the in-kind MTRS numbers in there. So what that says, all at the end of the day, we are projecting net income of $200,000 is what we're projecting at this point in time. And again, that is independent of anything that happens through collective bargaining. So we are still projecting a surplus at this point in time for the 2016-2017 year.
Why was it high in 14, 15?
Because the
Camp charges?
Nope, not in 14 and 15. So the cam charge settlement is coming through in the 15-16 number. Craig, I'd have to go back, and I'm sure I explained that multiple times in the 14-15 year, but I'd have to go back for the reasons why it was higher.
So, okay, we already know I'm not good at the money stuff, but the camp charge, the settlement, so does this tell us what we're spending that money on? Like, where does that go?
The CAM charges at this point in time are just going to our surplus. We haven't spent the CAM charges on anything. So just like any money that's left over at the end of the day goes to our surplus.
So this 200,000 surplus that we're projecting does not include that?
No, the surplus that we're projecting over here contemplates the CAM charges. Again, the CAM charge settlement happened in this calendar year, in the 15-16 calendar year.
Balance?
Yeah, there's no balance sheet.
What's going to happen in the
Yeah.
year?
Okay.
It's the budget.
And I think just one of the things that I learned is that the auditor had talked to us about having somewhere between 6, 8, 9 months of reserves, right? And so as we build these surpluses right now, it kind of ultimately it's up to the board, and we'll decide what that number feels good to me, right? So right now, anytime we end up with a surplus, that goes into that account, and that protects us for 6 or 7 months, or whatever that number is, should something go wrong.
I think right
And
now
the
we're about
operating-
5 months.
We're
What's
at
that?
about 7
We're
months
about
right
five.
now. We're at
Yeah.
about 7 months right now.
Yeah, so the auditor said that's kind of the strike zone, but again, just have one.
And the projected operating surplus for next year, if we do the math right, is about %.
That's correct.
Yeah,
You're
but it's
you're
not
spot
gonna
on.
be a surplus.
It's not a big margin.
It's not going to be a surplus.
That doesn't include teacher
We
raises.
will end up in a
No.
deficit.
Right.
So it's going to,
Less than a percent.
I think you're getting soft, huh?
I know, right?
We also have a capital budget. So again, capital budget are items that last more than 3 years and have to be capitalized. So these are the items that we're looking to spend cash on, and then will be depreciated over a number of years. So staff laptops, we replace the staff laptops every 3 years. $45,000 covers next year's staff laptops. We've got a couple of Chromebook carts that we're looking to bring in. Actually, one for each of the buildings that we're looking to bring in, that I highlight there. Our computer lab, and then just some overhead projectors and some classroom furniture. So looking to spend $183,000 of our cash that we have on these capital items is what we're looking for next year.
So question, so this 183 is,
Not included.
these are not included, that's not included in?
That is not included in that number, no.
So the second question I have is, so you mentioned some of these are replacements and some of these are new. So the Chromebook cards, are those new or are they replacing?
Those are net new.
I'm sorry?
Net new.
And so none of this is new then? This is only replacing what?
No, this is net new. The Chromebook
Okay.
cards are
Okay.
net new.
Not, not.
The staff laptops are, replacements. These 5 overhead projectors are net new. So we actually had classrooms that did not have overhead projectors in them. This classroom furniture is not new. Again, we replace classrooms on a rotational basis. The computer lab, one lab gets updated every couple of years, so that is, that's not new. And then these switches and servers, those are just replacements of existing equipment.
So it looks like of this 43,000 is new, which is the Chromebook carts, and then the 13 for the math laptops, which is completing their laptop cart?
Tell me again which line you're looking at.
The
The
third-
net news are row 10, these Chromebook carts, these overhead projectors, and these overhead projectors, I would say, are the
Well, the
new
math
items.
laptops are needed to complete the laptop cart.
Oh, okay, so we bought a cart and we didn't fill it completely. I think the cart holds, for the sake of argument, 30 laptops, and we must have only bought 17 for it.
Okay.
So that would, yes, I guess you could consider
Thank you.
that net new.
Thank you.
So what I'd be looking for at this point, well, first what I'd be looking for is if there's any other questions on the budget is what I'd be looking for. If there's not any other questions on the budget or the capital plan, I'd be looking for a vote to approve, our budget at this point, subject to, reevaluating the impact of the collective bargaining agreement when that's settled.
So moved.
I'll second.
Great, all in favor? Okay. I don't,
Ken did the second.
I don't think you.
I was just gonna say, I don't know.
Yeah,
if
you
I
can't
want
vote
to
on that. So just, you can't vote, but everybody else can vote.
Then I didn't.
Was there anyone that was against? No, okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you to the school.
Thank you to the school, because
Yeah.
actually in the 3.5 years that I've been on the finance committee, this was the most transparency that I have seen, with everything being laid out, and that was very, very helpful in understanding where the funding is going, so.
I want to mention that the interim business manager was very helpful in this regard as well.
She was great.
Okay, let's move on to each of our committee updates. Chris, you're up first.
Okay, so I don't see us hitting that $40,000 this year. To date, we've got a total of just over 20 in, so we're tracking at about half of where we were last year. We still have 2, maybe 3 solicitations to go, follow-ups. We did the student phone-a-thon was postponed, but did take place this week. So we've done just about everything that we did last year. So in terms of inputs to the campaign, you know, we're doing the same things, we're not achieving the same results. One of our, and you all received an email from me, is one of the things we're trying to do is improve our thanking. And what I'm asking us as board members to do is each take a list of maybe 10 donors to call them and thank them. It's really fun to do, especially if you get a tip that if you get a machine, you start by saying, "Hi, this is Chris, I'm a trustee, and you don't need to call me back." Once you say that into a voicemail, somebody feels like you gave them $5. It's just a message of thank you. We'll give you scripts. I would like to thank Ev and Craig and Rick and Liz for stepping forward, who've already volunteered to take a list of names. I'll be hoping that others will do so as well. And there's also some hope that if it starts to go around, people are getting thanked, it might remind some others that they want to give. But the primary thing is we really want to improve how we thank people for their support.
Chris, do you have a number on board participation in the?
Yes, we're at 11 out of 12 for a total of $3,400.
Chris, are you getting any feedback?
How did that compare last year?
Last year we were 100% giving and about $8,000.
And this year it was?
This year was 11 out of 12 and $4,000, $3,600.
I'm sure that 12th person's going to push us back up. They were waiting to sign a really big check.
Chris, any idea why that number's down? Are you getting feedback along the way? People are declining to donate?
No, because we've not, this campaign has never been, it's always been, with the exception of the students, and I've not heard what they have heard from me, although I can't imagine they heard much. I'm not going to get, we don't get a lot of feedback because what we do is a series of email and print asks and some outgoing advertising. We don't do a lot of direct business.
I remember last year at the parent roundtables, I think we were getting feedback. It was the time before we had our administration in place, and I think there was folks were still trying to work through how they felt about the school, and they were trying to, they were wrestling with that. We also heard last year that they were seeking more focus as we go forward, right? So that we were having a annual campaign to do X or something like that. And I wonder whether or not we should continue to pay attention to
So we
things
did
like
hear that, and we did respond to that in a couple of ways. One was during the campaign, we did so what's it being used for?
Yeah, good.
And we did actually target it for the faculty innovation grants. But then this year we looked at it and said, well, wait a second, what is an annual campaign supposed to be? It's supposed to be general operating support of the institution. And so in our letters we said, what does the money use for? And we say it gets used for different things at different times, but at the basis, at the core, it's about having a healthy school.
Right. Okay.
And then we do some projects.
Thank you.
And I think probably for September, we should do a longer discussion of fundraising, because the plan is to do this campaign again in November
seems apropos that I think sometimes people don't understand that charter schools, charter public schools and the traditional district public schools don't operate on a level playing field. And one of the biggest ways in which they don't is that the traditional district schools are eligible for the state school building authority funds. These are millions of dollars that go toward establishing a fine facility. So the charter schools aren't eligible for that. They do receive a small amount of money per student that go toward facilities, but it's nothing close to what the district schools are eligible for. And so as a result, one of the biggest challenges that charter schools face, just like any school, is having a fine, permanent, owned facility. That's really one of the greatest long-term challenges. And I think people don't understand that charter schools face this significant monetary challenge that they face.
I think they don't. It's hard for us to articulate that at this point because of our particular real estate
Yeah.
situation.
But it's really the future that you're looking at. So, when people say, well, you're trying to establish a surplus, yes, you're trying to safeguard, 7 months ahead, but you're also trying to get to the point where any self-respecting bank will look at you and be able to help you build a building that you really want. And that's something I think it can't be underestimated. We had an educator exchange today, and we invite the surrounding public schools to come and learn about us and our best practices and share. And a fellow that came from the Aspet Valley Regional School pointed out to me when we were talking this morning that they got $62 million to renovate their entire school in the last 3 years. That's something no charter school in the state would ever see any little bit of. So it's important to kind of.
And yet we can't target the fundraising to, what is this money going to? It's going to an endowment to get a building, because that's not where we are. So that
I know.
it's, we still need the money.
That's the big picture.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I put a note to talk about fundraising for last week in September. Education Committee?
So we met on the 14th of April, continue working on our presentation that we have to bring to the board at the next board meeting on the 26th of May. We'll be meeting again on the 12th, not on the 19th as originally scheduled. We shifted it back 1 week because of the AMSA Arts Night, and so we're meeting on the 12th this coming month. And that's my update.
Thank you. Ed, governance?
Yep, 2 main items. We met this past month, I think also on the 12th there. And the first item you have in your packets is a new policy, which we need to review and take a vote on at the end. This is for policy A106, Executive Director Professional Development Policy. And in essence, what it really says is that we believe in the process of continuous learning drives excellence in administration, support, services, teaching for AMSA. That process is under the direction of the ED for approving the budget as well as administering the professional development initiatives or programs. And in particular, there's one sentence in the second paragraph, the last sentence, which spells out specifically for the ED, any professional development for the executive director with an expense greater than $2,500 or more than 3 consecutive school days requires board chair approval. So in essence, that's what we've tried to put together here, so we actually have a policy which describes and makes it tangible what we sort of view as appropriate, the appropriate process for professional development.
Was that the reason for this policy, was that one sentence?
No, I think that was part, the big driver of it.
Okay.
But I think we also wanted to have something tangible in place so that when the board was also connected to sort of knowing what was happening from a professional development standpoint, who the authorizing individuals were. That was a big part of it, yes.
I actually have a question regarding that sentence. To me, it's kind of vague on whether it's like one individual class type of thing or a total of the 2,500 expenditure regarding needing the board chair approval. The 3 days second, that makes sense, but
So the
it just says
individual-
Yeah, your
with an
question
expense
is
greater
about-
than 2,500, is that for
For the year
year?
versus one.
Is that one class? Could they do
So you were
4
talking about,
classes for?
you're talking about a single event.
We were talking about a single event.
Well, yeah, I would just, I would actually
Clarify
suggest
that.
wording.
Maybe you just said any professional development event for the ED with expense greater than 2,500 or more than 3 consecutive days. So that, because when you say any professional development, Scott's right. I mean, that could be the entire year's worth.
I'm with you, I agree
Yeah.
with you. So what's the, what was your wording again that we're
Just
proposing?
put in event development
Event.
event.
Okay, got it.
Or activity.
Choose your word.
Okay, great, thank you.
You need a vote on this.
Yeah, we.
Yes, I was
So
gonna
what-
say, can we
what word
vote?
do you- What word do you want to use?
Well, I just wrote in event.
Okay, so I'll make a proposal that we adopt the ED professional development policy with the addition of the word event.
So can I just ask two things? One, is this, I don't know where these values came from. Are they just judgment calls, or are they based on some standard? Or?
Well, we had some discussion about it, and then I think, Tom, the numbers were run by you also?
Yeah, it was
Colleen?
finance committee, we talked about it, finance committee, but it was really just judgment.
Okay. But I guess I want to, I'm sorry, go ahead. You had two points you wanted to
And
make.
then the second was, is there an annual cap?
Right.
That's exactly what I was.
That was what Scott was getting to. So we could have 20 $2,000
Yeah.
events that wouldn't trigger this, but I don't think we're actually suggesting that we'd be comfortable with Dr. McCleary spending $40,000 on professional development.
Right, but that would show up in the budget,
Yeah.
so we felt that the cumulative would show up.
We would check it that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the budget would have been exceeded if it
But
was
Okay.
a cap.
That would-
the cumulative budget is for everybody, right, not just the.
Yeah, the cumulative budget's right there.
Mhm.
So the cumulative budget, not that Dr. McCleary would do that, could be spent by the ED sending himself to something every.
Yeah, I'm comfortable we would pick that up.
But exactly.
I'm comfortable we would pick that up.
We would
We're
like to
saying
pick
the
that up.
ED has the authority to manage and control the budget.
You don't want me to spend $70,000.
You know what, I think the executive director belongs in the classroom or in
I
the school.
couldn't agree with you more. I want to say for the record, I have not spent $1 on professional development for myself this year. Nor do I plan to.
Okay. So do we have a motion on the floor?
Yeah, we do have a motion, is there a second?
Is it seconded?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of adopting this policy with,
Am I allowed to vote?
no. All opposed? Then the motion passes.
I was trying to get attention, I didn't hear who made the motion or.
I made the motion, Chris seconded it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the second item that really took the majority of the meeting, we had a conference call with a guest on the phone who was the executive director for an organization called the National School Public Relations Association. And this falls under the board has a, says the governance, has a goal for improving communications within the board. And we looked at this sort of holistically, not just the board, but also there's some potential application here. And some benefits that maybe could be leveraged for the school. So we had that individual on the phone to do a conference call with us. Background information on the organization was sent out, started somewhere, I think, around in the 1980s, or at least one of the things that they do is they provide on-site assessments of the current schools or school districts, which is usually what they work with, larger entities than ours, their communication plans with the intent to help those school districts or individual schools improve their communication. And that process is one where they target focus groups, primarily your administration, faculty, community, parents, your key stakeholders, and they'll do on-site interviews, collect that information, gather it, analyze it, and then come back with a recommendation relative to a communication, areas for improvement within the current school communication system. And that whole process takes about 2 months. And they have, again, been at this for quite a while. And so this is something that they advertise as a service. That process, even though we did not get into a discussion around costs, it would more than likely be several $1,000s because they did give a figure for school districts, which is much larger than what we're dealing with, and that number was multiple thousands, 10 to 15,000, we'll say. So if we were to get in discussions just for our building, of course, it would be several thousand at least, the thinking is. So one of the other options that they also talked about was a organization that they partner with, which has a sort of a self-assessment survey. And that survey is called SCOPE, which is School Communications Performance Evaluation. And that is again, really sort of a self-assessment survey where they would then, which they have sent us a link, which gives us access to the survey questions and information, which we would then deploy, and they target it towards sort of 3 focus groups, being parents and families, faculty and staff, and community. And would be similar to their on-site survey, except for the fact that this is sort of a self-assessment. That process takes about 2 weeks, where they take the survey responses, they analyze those, compare them to sort of best practices, benchmarks that they have in place, and then they come back with recommendations, and that process is about 2 weeks or so, and would be maybe 100 or 2 from a cost standpoint. So where we sort of came to in the conference call was maybe we walk before we run, and that might be a good place to start. And so they've sent that information for us to consider. We haven't made any decisions at this point, but at our next meeting we'll be talking further about it and see if this is a path that we want to walk down. So it's a very good call. Liz joined us from a parent rep standpoint, and so a lot of different inputs, sharing around communication, and it was good dialogue.
So unfortunately I couldn't attend this meeting. Just playing devil's advocate, considering communication is such a critical issue, should we run rather than walk?
Well, I think we'll.
Not to say we shouldn't evaluate. Not to say we shouldn't evaluate
Sure.
that item, but
It's a
I would err on the run.
yeah, fair question, and I think we'll look a little bit more with this scope evaluation is what they sent us, and basically just sort of raise the question you just did, which is, do we want to start here, or do we want to just dive in? Do we think that this particular company, and it doesn't have to be this company, there may be others out there that do something similar, but do we want to walk that path and get some actual, do some bidding and get some costs and, run as opposed to walk? So I think that'll be a discussion topic for the next meeting, so I'm glad you raised it.
Mostly about internal communications, options, or is it also external?
Well, what they do from a service standpoint, external being the community, so they offer that as well as anything from internal to the school itself, the administration. I think Dr. McCleary, the date that we had the governance meeting, I believe you also had a parent tea, I think it was, or a parent coffee, so there was a conflict. There was something happening, so there was a conflict there. So, but basically, we sort of opened it up to the full gamut of not just board communications, but school communications, and so I think all of those things are on the table, internally and externally from a community standpoint. We offer that service too.
I think this firm's primary focus is external. It's public relations for school districts. And so a lot of it is on, you have, and you think about it, we should run before we should hurry up and run, because we've had all the communications problems we've had. And we haven't really had anything really bad happen. And I think one of the things that
From an external.
right, is that we have not had the disaster, we have not had people stealing, we have not had people, assaulted, the kinds of things that.
Cause to be in the press and to people outside.
And to cause furor and uproar and pitchforks. I think they approach it all as a piece. They come from an external base.
I think that's right. I mean, just by the name, National School Public Relations Association.
I would also caution that
actually one of the things that
You
was
know,
discussed.
seriously.
Yeah, that was
I mean,
first.
I've never, I mean, this is like, sir, this, and this, and this, and this, you know, let's just gather the data and let's take action. You know, we don't need a survey, you know, I mean, I just don't want a
Fair point,
survey.
we've done a lot of surveys, but I guess the key is, as you said, we need the data. So we gotta collect it and then act on it, so.
Time check.
All right.
Yep, that's all for governance.
Thank you, Ed.
Mhm.
All right, that's the end of our main agenda, or open session. For upcoming agenda topics, I think in addition to sort of our standard things, I do have that CPAC will be giving a presentation in May, and the Ed Committee will be providing their recommendations in May. So I have that on the topics for May. And then for June, just so we are all aware, we have renewals for trustees whose terms are expiring, and also officer elections. And at that time, we will also vote in for a new parent and faculty reps as well. Well, is PTO going to do a vote for?
I don't know. I'm going to reach out to Julie and I'll let you know.
Yeah.
So just going back to May and the parent survey, or the family
Oh,
survey.
yes, and we'll have the results of the parent survey.
Can we get that ahead of time so that we can, you know, go through that ahead of time and have some questions and things like that, and that we're not seeing it for the first time then?
I agree.
I think the window closes, as I said, the first week in May. And so then Panorama will send the results, and then we can,
Okay.
they'll give us, I think they'll probably be happy to give me some advice on how to, interpret it, but, it could be distributed to everybody.
So one quick item on that is, I know when we did the faculty survey, we had Panorama basically separate the questions that were Likert type questions versus the open response. And so that when we distributed it, we could distribute the Likert type questions, the rating questions, and basically then redact the other
Yeah.
ones. So we want to make sure they separate those.
Agreed.
Once we distribute it, it becomes necessary to publish it externally.
Is there another edition of the faculty survey? Does that need to be on the agenda, or when does that happen? I know the one we did in January was the second.
Yeah. But I don't think that would be ready to put it out in May. Start in May. So that'll be June. All right, just a quick check on meeting effectiveness. Do people feel like we covered this, where we went way over the sub-budget?
So where did we go?
So overall, we hit the time. We spent a little more time on budget, but we spent a little less elsewhere, so we made time.
I think having a timer is a great thing.
Yeah, so having the timer is good. All right.
Elaine, I think setting the expectation at the beginning of the meeting is helpful too.
Okay, great. This is also just showing that I'm getting slightly better at budgeting the time, because when I first started doing this, I had no idea how much time to set for each agenda.
That felt efficient to me.
I mean, we were talking, right, so, good. All right, good. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session, to discuss, litigation as well as collective bargaining, strategies for collective bargaining where open session detrimental to the process.
So moved.
Okay, Chris made that motion. And Mike second, and we need a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Great, and I will just make a note that Dr. McCurdy is invited to join us, and actually Tom Azaredo will be invited to join us as well for the first part of executive session when we're discussing litigation and both Tom and Jeff Locke, so please sworn.
Comment?
A lot of times we circulate people that know.
Yeah, really? I didn't know you too. That's going to live here what you do.
Yeah, no, it's-
Okay.
I did mine.